So this day is run by Typelevel, but not everyone knows what that means. So we'll be welcoming a round table. First, back to the stage, our NE Scala chair, Justin Coeur, and he'll be moderating a round table with our fellow Typelevel Steering Committee members, Andrew Valencik, Mike Pilquist, Sam Pillsworth, and Daniel Spiewak, along with a founding member, Miles Sabin, once again, for a friendly conversation about how Typelevel works. So yeah, let's have everyone join. All right, cool. Oh.
I don't seem to be showing. Hang on a second, I'm going to step down and step back again.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, I'll leave it to you.
Excellent. Let Andrew in on the stage. So, howdy everybody. Welcome all to the roundtable panel on how Typelevel works. And basically, the purpose here is to demystify things a little bit. Everybody hears about Typelevel a lot, and lots of the folks here use the Typelevel libraries, but I think most people don't really know who Typelevel are or how we function, and it would be a good idea to sort of get the word out there. So to start out, I'm going to ask everybody to do a brief introduction of basically where you're coming from, how you found your way to Typelevel. I'll start out. Hi, I'm Justin. I've been hacking around in Scala since 2008 and programming it full-time for about 10 years. I got the FP bug about 5 years ago, and about a year ago, I wound up joining the steering committee, mostly with the agenda of getting this conference running again, which, yay, everybody has joined us for this again. So I will go around. Mike.
So Mike Pilquist. I started doing Scala because Dick Wall talked about it a lot on episodes of the Java Posse. That got me hooked. I started doing standard library actors, built a big production system with standard library actors pre-Akka. Moved those to Akka, got frustrated with some concurrency issues we had, and kind of went all in on FP. That was probably about nearly a decade ago. So kind of rode the wave from Scala Z through CATS, and happy to be here today and have a ton of success stories built on functional programming.
Cool. Sam.
Hello, thank you. I'm Sam. I started writing Scala, I guess, in 2016-ish, and then took a break to go back to writing a bunch of Python, and then started writing functional Scala when I was working at Shopify with Andrew. I don't remember what the rest of the question was, what I got into Typelevel for. More of a lurker at first. And, when a call came out for volunteers, it said that beginners were welcome. And I was like, I'm a beginner. And I, wanted to help with that, help with some of the community aspects and help with documentation.
Neat. Miles?
Right. I probably should have prepared for this because so much of this stuff is so far in the past. I just can't remember any dates. Hopefully, somebody can help me out with this. I guess I first encountered Scala in 2004, so that's a very, very long time ago. Crazy amount of time, in fact. In terms of, let's just jump ahead to whenever it was that Typelevel kicked off. I forget exactly what year it was. I really just don't remember at all. Daniel, maybe, or Michael, can you remember?
I think 2010 was like the initial conversations, or even 2009.
It was probably something like that. I mean, I remember a sort of a post-conference conversation between me, Eric, Eric Osheim, and Lars Hoppel at Flatmap Oslo sometime, which I think that was when we first seriously floated the idea of
2011.
2000, yeah, that was probably it.
Yeah.
So I think you know, but by that time, I guess Scala stuff was becoming a thing, and Shapeless was kind of a thing at that point as well. And also there were sort of related projects, one of which was Eric's Spire project. And it kind of felt like that we were all sort of moving in roughly speaking the same kind of direction. We were all you know, trying to do principled functional programming in Scala that was idiomatic for Scala, that wasn't necessarily trying to sort of ape or imitate Haskell, but was trying to be its own thing. And we all felt that there were, you know, problems with, you know, Scala the language, Scala C the implementation, which you know, relatively small things that if we could do something about, then you know, it would make all of our lives easier and unlock lots of things. And I think we kind of felt that, you know, that it would make sense for us to work together to see, you know, if a collection of projects and a bunch of people rather than just a bunch of, you know, individual randos might actually have a little bit more success in actually getting the things that we wanted, and I think, you know, ultimately, I think we did quite well, really. I mean, I think certainly things have improved from the point of view of actually doing the kind of functional programming that we wanted at the time to do enormously. I think that's been a big success. I'm very, you know, that's amongst other things things that I'm, you know, I feel really quite proud of, and I think they obviously many people have contributed to that, but you know, I think it's been a good thing. Now I'm here as the sort of token alumnus. I stepped down again. I can't remember the date. Is it 2 years ago now? Is it more than that? I really can't remember. But anyway, I am no longer a member of the steering committee. I mean, lots of things intervened, and you know, people can keep this kind of stuff up for a certain amount of time, and then, you know, after a while it becomes too much, and there are other things that people have to do to get on with their lives. So that was kind of where I got to with the steering committee. I'm absolutely delighted to be on a panel with a bunch of people who are doing such a brilliant job continuing and deepening and broadening and extending the kind of work that was started, and that's great stuff.
Cool. Daniel?
So mean to put me after Miles. It's like I was going to sound so awesome, and then Miles left, and I was like, well. I have been doing Scala since 2005, I think. So not quite as long as Graybeard here, but getting there. Yeah, so I started Scala actually for the same reason that Mike did. Actually, no, it was a professor, and then Dick Wall after I started. Anyway, it's hard to remember. It was a really long time ago. And I've kind of seen it through, you know, a lot of different things. I think it was my second or third job with Scala that I was kind of introduced to Scala Z, and I was very much opposed. I was like, I think this is a terrible idea, and you know, I don't think Scala needs it. It was pretty much converted over the course of that, and really saw kind of the strengths of like what functional programming could do, or rather what abstraction could do. Fast forward a little bit, began to be introduced into Scala Z Stream, and this was back in like Scala Z Stream, like, I don't know, 0.1, and I was very hooked. I think Scala Z Stream, we had this project that we were going to convert from like the abstraction that we had been working with to Scala Z Stream. We budgeted like 2 weeks to prototype it. I did it in an afternoon, and it worked perfectly, and it was faster than it was at the beginning, and I was like, holy crap. This, by the way, was also around the time period where I started using Scodec, which was Michael's thing that he didn't mention. So that's fabulous software. And so I fast forward a little bit, I became a maintainer of Scala Stream. I became a maintainer of some of the stuff inside of Scala related to task. When Typelevel came on the scene and CATS came on the scene, that was kind of a gap in sort of CATS's offerings. Like it really didn't provide, you know, anything related to that kind of fundamental primitive that Scala task had been. FS2 by this point was a thing and was starting to kind of take shape, but it really didn't, it had kind of its own thing internally, but it wasn't really the standardized thing. So I started CATS Effect to kind of fill that gap. And with an enormous amount of collaboration, and then, you know, people filling the gap in my vast hiatuses and like genuinely doing all of the work while I came back in later to take the credit, like, you know, CATS Effect has kind of like moved into the space that it's in now. And so that's primarily what I spend most of my technical time on doing, is like working on that. And yeah, just putting a bow on all of this, echoing what Miles said about how the ecosystem that we have today and the tools that we have to work with would have made like 10-year ago me just absolutely sing for delight. Like it's amazing how far we have come. And sometimes I know I at least tend to lose sight of that, because like I'm constantly thinking about all of the things that could be better, right? And like, you know, but really, it is amazing, and it's amazing not because of the work that I have done or the work that, like, you know, Miles has done certainly, but like really the people that are like in the ecosystem writ large, and like all of the work that all of you have built on top of this is actually amazing. Also, Skodik is good, but like all of that is what makes this an amazing ecosystem, and really, really, really amazing.
Andrew?
Hi, I'm Andrew. Yeah, so I think I started Scala around like, well, I guess when Sam did, 2016, because we were sitting right beside one another. And then I also was forced to write Python for compensation for a while. And then eventually got back into functional Scala like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And joined the Typelevel Steering Committee because, well, one, I was pretty enamored with like the sort of infectious helpfulness and positivity from like Bob Norris. I could embarrass people by saying their names. They're beside me on the panel. Like Typelevel was always some of the best channels to be in on Gitter to get help with things, and I wanted to continue making that community like that. So we joined the steering committee maybe about a year ago, and I've been slowly trying to build out search for all of our Typelevel web pages. My main sort of like open source technical thing in the last bit.
Cool. Well, welcome to all of you. So to start the conversation off, Miles and Daniel both sort of talked a bit about where we came from and how things got started. Sort of pulling things up to a 1,000-foot view. People, I think when people think of Typelevel first, they think of us as just a whole bunch of libraries. What would you say are Typelevel's sort of core strengths? What's its mission? What are the priorities of Typelevel?
Can I jump in on that one?
Sure.
I think we got like an awesome view of that in Michael's talk earlier today, where he like clearly demonstrated how much easier it would be for maintainers if we were writing CATs using like the approach in leopards. Like today, Scala 3 provides so many nice things to be able to build out a functional library like that. And we're choosing not to release that. We're not replacing CATs with some sort of CATS 3 built on leopards, because Typelevel cares so much about stability and being an industrial tool. And yeah, so I think actually like making functional Scala, but like practical, that you can very much use at your day job and have an industry focus on, is like a huge bread and butter thing that I see Typelevel doing.
I think it's worth saying that that's a change. I mean, you know, that's different from where we were when we started out. I mean, I think, you know, I personally, you know, I used to have a massive banner across the Shapeless README saying this is experimental. I reserve the right to change everything and break everything at a moment's notice without, and if you don't like it, tough. And you know, we forked the Scala compiler, which in terms of not necessarily wanting to I suppose, go with the majority opinion as far as where the bulk of people were at the time. I don't think that's really where we were at all. I think actually quite the opposite. I think we were at that point we were being disruptive, and for all the right reasons. I think both technically and in terms of the way that the organisation works and things along those lines as well. I think we wanted to do things a bit differently. That has changed though over the last few years, and I think that change is really a measure of success. I mean, the fact of the matter is that many of us, our livelihoods, our jobs depend on the software artifacts that we've produced. Many corporations depend on those artifacts and the people that have built them, and I guess that kind of changes things a bit. I think that's changed the kind of approach that individual project maintainers and the organisation as a whole takes towards things. And you can have different views on whether that's a good thing or not. I mean, maybe or whatever it is, it's certainly different.
I think that's a really interesting point, Miles. And yeah, I think there's elements of that which are definitely our ecosystem maturing, right? Like the number of people who are building something on CATS 10 years ago, it's absolutely rounding error compared to the number of people building on stuff on it today, right? And you can blow that out even further if you look at like, okay, what's the number of end users who unknowingly or knowingly consume a product which is built on CATS? I mean, it's literally something you could measure easily into the billions. And that's not an exaggeration. But like at the same time, there's also been a maturity that's kind of gone into Scala as well. Like I kind of think back like 10, 12 years ago, like people were doing stuff in Scala, which was just like, oh, I'm going to do something random and then like do a talk about it. And then someone's going to put it into production before I know what's going next. And it was kind of the Wild West. And like the language kind of isn't like that anymore, which is sad in some sense, but it is also like the whole ecosystem's kind of moved forward. And I think what is interesting, and I'll put kind of like a sort of a flavor of optimism in here, is like there are still areas where we're really advancing the state of the art in interesting ways and doing stuff that other people aren't doing and kind of disrupting. I think it was brought up in chat, like the sort of multi-platform thing, like trying to have this uniform ecosystem across 3 completely independent runtimes and doing that in a way which actually works and is ergonomic. That has not been done like in the industry at all. And there's a lot of challenges and interesting things that come along with that and stuff that we've discovered. So I think on some areas we've matured, and I think in other areas we still have that in our core DNA, and that to me is very interesting.
It still sort of like blows my mind that you can fire up like a Lambda function that talks to, RDS, compiled natively. Like it's just all of these pieces kind of clicking together and working. It's incredible.
Armin is the glue.
So it occurs to me one sort of question from a philosophical point of view. Adam, in his talk this morning, sort of alluded to the patterns of the way we think, and got into sort of it's considered an anti-pattern if bringing in one library implies lots of dependency changes, and sort of I'm curious how people think about how the type level ecosystem hangs together. How do we think in terms of the pieces, what's coupled, what's not coupled? This is one that I don't think we've talked about quite so explicitly, although I think there are some standard patterns there.
I'm going to say something very briefly and then hand over to anybody else, really, because I mean, what I was going to say, I have almost no experience of this, actually, until quite recently, until the last few years, because I've been working either on fundamental libraries with zero dependencies, or the compiler itself, modifying the language, or building fundamental libraries. It's only really since I've been working on Grackle, so it's basically the last 4 years. I switched from working on Scala and Dotty straight to working on Grackle. So working from right the way underneath type level stack to working right the way on top of the type level stack. And I've only in the last few years begun to kind of appreciate some of the problems that have been causing people so much grief over the years. But anyway, that's all I really have to say about it. So I think everybody else on this panel is much more qualified to talk about it than I am.
I'm going to give an opinion, and then I'm going to orchestrate the conversation just a little bit. I'm going to hand it over to Sam, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mike, because I think Mike and I are like the sort of least fixed point and greatest fixed point on this exact question. And I think Sam would offer like a very unique perspective on it as well. So from my perspective, right, like working on cats effect, like this is a very very foundational thing. And we have to think about APIs, we have to think about semantics. Like we make a tiny subtle little change in like one particular combinator that like the way that it's scheduled and the way that it like preamps like behaves a little bit differently, and the world erupts. And like there are these giant blog posts about like how to be very careful on your upgrade because this tiny little semantic change. So on the one hand, we have to be really, really, really careful about that. And we have to be very thoughtful about it. On the other hand, you know, stagnation is death. And so you do have to kind of like move things forward and you know, take a hard line sometimes. So I think this doesn't exactly answer what you were asking, Justin. It's kind of, I think, a little more underpinning, but it's like, I try to always have in my mind the end consumer of the people that sit on top of the towering stack of things. So Miles is my archetype now. And I try to think about, okay, I'm offering you a new version. I want that new version to have value. I want to materially make your life better, which may mean changing things. But I know from experience how painful it can be to adapt to change. So I want to do that really, 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 really carefully. And I want to try to support whatever weird holding down shift to make your CPU hot workflow you have. Anyway, Sam, Mike, go for it.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I think this ties in a lot with Andrew's first point, just about like the focus on stability, and like all of the libraries kind of interacting and like pulling in like a dependency chain. When I worked in Python, I would fight like tooth and nail against pulling in a dependency. Like I would be like, I don't care how much code we have to write. Can we get this done with the standard library? Because I don't want another thing in that pip file, right? And then also like recently at work, we've been going through like this big like swirl of dependency upgrades. And you know, I think that the stability of the type level ecosystem in like recent years and that focus is kind of what buys grace, I think, in the like strong relationship between dependencies. Like I don't need to worry about an FS2 patch bump. Like I'll merge that in my sleep. I don't mind. So yeah, I think that that's a strength of ours.
I guess I would look at it or answer it in two different ways. The first is, actually, I'm not sure I'm as far away from Daniel as he thinks I am. You know, stability has become conflict
here.
Yeah, I mean, especially as the ecosystem has matured. Like when we did Cats Effect 3.x, we knew it was sort of like the last chance for a very long time to make breaking changes. Same thing with FS2. Like it was locked into stone. And even FS2.3 started as like, we're going to use the same API as FS2 2.x, and we're just going to do the Cats Effect upgrade. But then when you have these long-term commitments to stability, you know, one more thing gets in, right? Because you know it's your last chance for a while. So while the hood's open, you know, add the breaking changes you need. So anyway, I think we've done well in stability. I think we've said a lot already on the panel about sort of where we are and how it's sort of a result of our success. Maybe a different way to kind of tackle it is the, I'd say, disorganized nature of the way which projects come on and get onboarded, and people come up with ideas and then bring them. You know, now we actually have a formal process, and maybe if someone wants to talk a little bit about that, we can give a summary of how that operates. But like, there's no like overall blueprint for the type level stack. right? There's no like grand architecture that folks are working on. Like everybody's going to chip away at it. Everybody has ideas. They come up with their own quirky names for their projects, right? When they come into the ecosystem, they keep those quirky names. You know, we have FS2. We don't have cat stream, which we talked about. You know, should we have cat stream? And so, I mean, there's good and bad in that, right? In some ways, like it allows maintainers to come into the ecosystem, join, be part of the ecosystem, and maintain that identity, that thing that's unique. There's also the cost for our end users that like they can't just type, you know, import org.typelevel.stream, right, and just autocomplete all their way to a full running app. So one of the things that maybe Daniel and I have disagreed about in the past, I was kind of a proponent for like can't we just onboard them all and come up with the stack? But we never quite got there.
So I guess I'll spin off of that since Mike is starting to move into that topic. Let's start talking about how the organization works. So let's talk about how does a library become part of Typelevel, and what does that mean? Someone want to talk about affiliate versus organization, project, and stuff like that? Who wants to take the ball and run with it?
Okay, so you can migrate a project to become a Typelevel project by opening an issue on the governance repo. I think it's linked to at the bottom of the projects page on the Typelevel org. The main practical difference between affiliate and organization today is effectively like who owns the sonotype keys. Organization, there's a bit more like infrastructure in place. It's hosted on the Typelevel GitHub. So effectively it's sort of a +1 to the like future maintainability of a project in case something was to happen, like we could still publish new releases. Where an affiliate, the project is probably still hosted on its original GitHub. We ask that project like adopt a code of conduct and maybe a few other things, but it's still somewhat independent. Yeah. Sorry, we're close to 4, and I think there's a really good question in chat that I'm gonna, because I'm currently keep talking. Would you be able to give practical advice on how to get involved in Typelevel contributing to libraries? Yes, there are at least 2 really good starting points. There's a start contributing channel in the Typelevel Discord, which is where the majority of the community, there's a lot of active chat in the Typelevel Discord. If you're not on there, I recommend joining. It's quite nice. And the start contributing channel, even if it's been quiet for a while, it's exactly designed for somebody to go to and say like, hey, I'd like to start contributing. And then people will typically pitch in with some like up-to-date ideas on where help might be needed. There's also the Good First Issue project board on the GitHub organization that sort of aggregates a bunch of issues labeled Good First Issue across the Typelevel and affiliate orgs. Thanks, Sam, for sharing it. So those are 2 like really concrete, easy ways to get started. But people love to hear that people want to get started. So I'm sure you will see a rather enthusiastic response in the start contributing channel if you were to ask.
So I have to run, but I wanted to underscore that really, really specifically. I've definitely heard from people that getting started, especially on some of these more foundational projects like CATS or CATSF, can be very, very intimidating for newcomers. Like, you know, you're just like going along, minding your own business, and suddenly Mike Pilquist is commenting on your PR, and you're like, holy shit. So I definitely want to encourage all of you that like nothing makes me happier than like someone coming in and just trying to hack on stuff and like try to make a thing. This is where Armin came from, in case you thought he sprang up from the ground. Like he came in, he didn't even know Scala, and he was like, I'm just gonna like do CATS effect thing. Like, just go for it. Like we try to structure the code and we try to structure our projects to be as accessible as possible given the subject matter, right? And like to have as reasonable a ramp as we can. So I don't know, I think hacking on this stuff is really fun, and we really, really, really welcome new voices, exceptionally so.
Thank you, and I know Daniel has to run. Let's keep going for a few more minutes and talk about a couple more subjects, but thank you for being here. So I wanted to also toss out the topic. We are all members of the steering committee, or Miles was one of the founding members of the steering committee. What is the steering committee? What do we do? How do we operate? How do people join the steering committee? What does that mean? Who wants to take us away? I've just tossed out a bunch of subjects.
Somebody else, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm playing moderator, so I'm trying not to talk very much.
Yeah, so steering committee, how we operate. There is a charter in the governance repo, but that's going to be the most boring way to learn, and I hope Ross doesn't take that badly. You know, like we've got a chair who is the administrative lead, I would say. So, you know, like organizing votes, counting quorum on those votes, and that's about it. Any of the decisions that are made by the steering committee is done by these votes, and there are various levels, numbers of votes we need to achieve in order to do things. So if someone new wants to join the committee, I actually don't really know. Like, I guess you would like submit an application, you would like email. There was like an email. I just sent an email, and then a vote happened that I obviously wasn't part of. But yeah, so that would happen. And, you know, like in order to accept a new member, we need like 3/4 agreement from the existing committee. And, you know, to amend our charter, we need like a 2/3 agreement. So, you know, just a lot of simple fractions that turn out to be difficult sometimes. And yeah, what else is there to say? We're trying to kind of, I don't know, meet more and talk more, and a lot of our meetings are current or have been async as people are busy. And
so I will note, since it probably isn't obvious to the audience, unless they were keeping count, that 3 of the people currently on screen are new on the committee this year. So yeah. you are. It is totally cool for new people to come join the steering committee. Among other things, that lets that gives room for the older members to feel like you know, when they are burned out, they don't have to keep going forever.
Yeah, I thought you were calling me out for not speaking up on the committee there. I will say, like, it wasn't clear, you know, when we got started that we needed a steering committee. Like, you know, like Miles said, it was, you know, a few folks at a conference. And then I joined Typelevel initially because I had just built S-Codec and I needed a place to host the Scala docs. And Lars happened to have a server that he was hosting the Typelevel website on. And that's not why I stayed, but that was my initial hook. And it took a long time and a lot of kind of starts and restarts for us to kind of figure out that, like, hey, this is a big organization. It does have, you know, a lot of different concerns for industrial adoption, for our own well-being, for the well-beings of our projects that we all manage, and that we did need a certain amount of formalism around it to kind of go from the, you know, sort of enthusiasts that are interested in technology and turn it into something that could be dependable and you know, the community could rely on.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say it took us quite a while to work out how to do it. I think that you know, the 3 new members on this panel, I think is an absolutely great thing, and I think it's a big improvement over where we were, you know, prior to me leaving. Because I think really at that point we've been in a situation where, you know, most of the members of the steering committee have been were people who've been involved with Typelevel for a very, very long time. We didn't have any clear process for how people joined. You know, people left when they decided they'd had enough, and that was kind of it. And I think that's very much the way that sort of, you know, sort of elective organizations of the form that you know, the Typelevel is actually kind of initially start. I mean, they start with something very, very informal. No structures of any sort whatsoever. They get by on you know, goodwill, as long as it's always there, which is not always the case, and cooperation and what have you. And at some point when things get, I suppose, large enough and sufficiently work-like that it ceases to be an entirely, a pleasurable kind of activity. At that point, you need some kind of structures. Yeah, I mean, I'm no longer involved. I no longer have access to the secret steering committee channels where all the really interesting, plotting and scheming goes on anymore. So I don't really know what's going on. But from where I sit, it looks as though things are being run in a much better way than they used to be. I think that's a positive development, and it's really, really good seeing you people involved.
So, go for it.
I just want to mention that unfortunately the steering committee channel is not nearly as exciting as Miles just implied. But you really do not need to be on the steering committee to start helping with Typelevel. By far, there are so many people that contribute so much that are not on the steering committee. Don't view that as a blocker to helping by any means.
Right. Yeah. The steering committee is essentially the organizational side of things more than anything else. On the technical side, some members of the steering committee are deeply involved in the technical side. Some aren't. I actually am mostly involved on the organizational side. And other than that, I'm mostly a consumer of Typelevel. So to round things out, I will toss out one last broad question, which is, where do folks see things as going? What are challenges yet to come? What can we do better? What do we think are the current trends within Typelevel? What are folks' thoughts? And look, we have a box that might be Daniel.
I don't know why the browser doesn't want to show me, but I'm here.
Excellent. So anyway, throwing out the question, where are things going? What do we see as future trends?
I have opinions, but I've been here for 5 seconds.
I just opened the question of where are things going? What are our challenges? What can we do better? Stuff like that.
So
I'll go, Sam, please.
Sam, go for it.
Okay. Just really, really broadly, kind of going back to, I think Adam's talk, for me personally, it's the I don't know. I don't want to use the word framework just because it is loaded, but I think there are still some things that are very much a collection of libraries, and I think that there's work that could be done to be to bring us towards a more kind of cohesive ecosystem, specifically around our documentation and how we talk about Typelevel, and so the native versus JS, we have a section in our projects. You can see which ones work where, which projects support which platforms, but how do you connect all of that? How do you make it all work? If you are going from 0 to a functional CRUD app at an enterprise Java place, and you want to bring in Typelevel and you haven't built a functional Typelevel application before, how do you do that? What are good enterprise best practices that you should be aware of? That kind of thing. I think that we can do more to educate that kind of adoption. That's what I would like to focus on.
I want to say that Sam's thing to focus on is phenomenal. So I think Mike and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, where we kind of contrasted, the sort of, ecumenical, anyone can come in and become part of the Typelevel ecosystem, and but it's hard for the end users then to figure out what's going on. I think there's a wonderful degree of openness to people being able to come in, and I don't want us to lose that. But at the same time, we need kind of we need that roadmap. We need that bootstrapping, like the sort of the map to the ecosystem. Like, I just want to like load a file out of S3. How do I do that, right? Like, that's where the toolkit comes in. I think that's where, and there's a number of other efforts in this regard, and it's so important, so very, very, very important. I've wanted that for a really long time, and I think now it's finally moving forward. But secondary to that, I'm going to say I'm also very, very excited about the tectonic shift that is about to happen underneath the IO substrate of most type level libraries. Like, I think this is a thing that like has kind of gone on like behind the scenes and for like, I don't know, like 2 years now, and I'm not sure everybody's been totally aware of it, but like, to give you an idea of how dramatic the impact of this thing that we're doing is about to be, we finally got some of the performance results of the IOU ring version of this, and it was more than a 300% performance improvement on HTTP4S Ember. More than 300%. So like, it's not always going to be that rosy, but like, holy crap. So like, some really, really, really amazing things are happening inside it. I think is the IO pollers is basically the way to think about it, the polling system stuff. And that is also a really good place to like jump in and help and contribute, because there's a lot of work to be done and like a lot of really cool things. But so on one extreme, we're making this very, very nitty gritty detail work better, because basically we're not going to use Miles's framework for interacting with asynchronous IO anymore. And on the other end of the spectrum, this sort of roadmap for people to work with the type level ecosystem as a whole, I think that's a pretty good pair of bookends in my book.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will say, just to Sam's point, having a couple of months ago come in and decided, hey, I want to bootstrap a new library, and I went over to the Discord and I said, how do I do this? And I got pointed to the toolkit, and it's sort of, wow, in 2 hours, I have a library completely up and running with GitHub hooks and documentation and everything. It's sort of, that is smoother than anything I've ever had before. Cool.
Yeah, well, I guess I've had a similar experience. I mean, not with the toolkit per se, but with SBT type level, which I think is well, from what you just mentioned, I think is doing most of the heavy lifting with that, which is just an absolutely extraordinary piece of work. Yeah, no, quite amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Which is also very helpful in another way, in as much as because it does impose a certain amount of consistency among across projects. I mean, both in terms of the output, so in terms of the generated microsites, or the fact that it enables very, very straightforward cross-platform builds, but also to a certain extent it imposes a certain amount of consistency within projects, which means that from the point of view of new people coming in, they'll look at one project, if it's using SBT type level, it will be at least structurally very similar, somewhat similar to any other project which is also using SBT type level. So from that point of view, I think it's a really, really good on-ramp, or contributed to on-ramps at any rate.
Gateway drug.
So, do folks have final thoughts? We're now starting to run up at our 45 minutes. So, anything to say to the crowd before we finish the day? Besides, yeah,
Daniel's thoughts. People are friendly. Get involved. We'd love to have you help. If you're not sure where, just reach out and ask, and I'm sure we can come up with things. If we don't have enough issues marked good first issues, we'll work on that. But sometimes it's hard to see where the weaknesses are because we've been in it so long. So speak up, share your perspective.
Yeah, I wanna underscore the underscore right there from Mike. Those of us you're seeing on the screen right now have been very, very, very close to these problems for a very, very, very long time, right? Like, I see a very warped version of Scala, and I know that. One of the most valuable things you can be is someone who hasn't been doing that for a really long time. Like, come in, make some changes, push your opinion. Your opinion matters so much, because I know that I have a very biased perspective, and your opinion is the one that matters more.
Just like really quickly, we have it, no one uses it, which is fine if people don't like it, but we do have an open source tuple license as well. So, you know, like if like screen sharing time and like, you know, being able to jump on a call is like would be helpful. Like we do have those tools available as well, just to put that out there into the community.
Anybody else? Otherwise, thank you to the members of the panel. Been good getting to chat with you, and I will see all of you on Discord. And with that, that starts bringing us to the end of the Typelevel Summit part of the conference. Everyone, at this point, I am moving into wrap. So that's it for today's programming. But we are only a third of the way through the whole conference. Tomorrow we're going to be coming back. We're going to be picking up at 9 a.m. Eastern with any Scala, which is going to look a lot like the Typelevel Summit. There will be a slightly different focus to the talks, but it'll look fairly similar. Just to sort of whet your anticipation, we're going to have technical talks on subjects like concurrency and large language models, which are very au courant. We're going to have on the community side an introduction to Scala Bridge London, and we're going to have a panel discussion on how do we improve diversity in the Scala community. And we're going to finish off tomorrow with a presentation by the next generation of Scala programmers. It should be a lot of fun. So everybody, join us back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And in the meantime, this spatial chat area is going to stay open. The Discord is going to be open. Folks, I encourage you to hang out, take the opportunity to socialize with the rest of the community, have fun, and please remember, code of conduct still applies. Be good to each other. But have a good evening, and we will see you all tomorrow.